Hello everyone, in today's video we will be solving your exercises from throughout the week. So let's get started with worksheet number 1. We first need to round these numbers. Here we will be rounding to the tens. Here, here, and here. Here the hundreds, so here, here, and here. And here the thousands, so here, here, and here. Now, let's get started. Next to the 1 is a 7. So 1 is going to grow by 1, and then 7 will become 0. So we get this. 1 grows by 1 becomes 2, and 7 becomes 0. Next, 4 is a small number, so it's just going to become 0, and 3 stays the same. So we get this number. Next, 8 is a big number, so 0 grows by 1, 8 becomes 0, and we get this number. Next, 7 is a big number, so 8 and 6 become 0, and 0 grows by 1. So we get this. Here 2 is small, so we get this. Here 6 is a big number, so 8 becomes 9, 6 and 0 becomes 0. So we get this. Next, 6 has a 3 next to it, which is a small number. So we're going to get 12,176,000. Next, 7 is a big number, so this becomes 15,285,000. Here 4 is a small number, so here we get 17,007,000. Alright, next, we need to round each of these numbers to the thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions. So let's go. The first number is 128,500. Alright, so alright, here we're rounding to the thousands. Next to the thousands is a 5, so this becomes 0, and 8 becomes 9. Now we're rounding to the tens of thousands. So this has 2 has an 8 next to it, so 2 is going to become 3. Then the hundreds of thousands have a 2 next to them, so that becomes 0, 8 becomes 0, the 5 becomes 0, and 1 stays the same because 2 is a small number. Next we want to round to the millions, but this number has no millions, so if I wanted to write millions, they'd have to be 0. The millions have 1 next to them, which is a small number, meaning that all of this gets turned to zeros. And if I wanted to be completely correct, I should just have 1 0. So this gets rounded down to 0. Next we have 157,600, and we get let's get started here. We start off from the thousands. There's a 6 here, so this becomes 0, and 7 becomes 8. Next, the tens of thousands have a 7 next to them, so this becomes 0, the 6 becomes 0, and 5 grows by 1, becomes 6. Next, the hundreds of thousands have a 5 next to them, so everything becomes 0, except the 1, which grows by 1. Next, millions. This number again has no millions, but if it did, if it was written anyway, it would have to be 0. So And next to them is a 1, meaning that because 1 is a small number, all of these numbers will become 0. And again, if I want to be completely correct, it should just be 1, 0. Next, we have 4,124,200. Let's copy that. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna fill out this board first with all the basic numbers, and then I'll get back to you. Alright, so now I've written down all the numbers before they get rounded, so let's get started. Here we're looking at the thousands. Next to them is a 2, which is a small number, so it turns to 0, and 4 stays the same. Next we're looking at the tens of thousands. Next to them is a 4, which is a small number, so everything changes to 0 here, but the 2 stays the same. Next, hundreds of thousands. The hundreds of thousands have a 2 next to them, so it and everything after it gets turned to 0, and 1 stays the same. Next, this number does have millions. Next to them is a 1, which is a small number. So it and everything after it gets turned to 0. We get 4 million. Next, thousands. Next to them is an 8, which is a big number, so it gets turned to 0. Everything after it would get turned to 0, but it's 0 already, so yeah. And 1 grows by 1 because 8 is a big number. Then we're looking at the tens of thousands, which have a 1 next to them, which is a small number, so it gets turned to 0, everything after it gets turned to 0, and this 0 stays the same. Next we're rounding to the hundreds of thousands. Next to them is a 0, which is a small number, of course. So it would get turned to 0. Everything after it gets turned to 0. And we get 200,000. Again, we have a number with no millions. So we put a 0 in the place of the millions. And next to it is a 2, which is a small number. So everything gets turned to 0. We're going to get 0 again. Next, here we have the thousands. Next to them is a 9, which is a big number. So everything after it gets turned to 0, but the 6 also grows to 7. Next, we're looking to round to the tens of thousands. Next to them is a 6, so 8 and everything after it gets turned to 0, and the 7 grows by 1, becomes 8. Next, we're rounding to the hundreds of thousands, right? Next to them is a 7, which is a big number. So it and everything after it gets turned to 0, and the 9 has to grow by 1. Now, what did we say happens when the 9 grows by 1? It becomes 10, right? So we write 0 and we carry 1 over to the next digit, but there is no next digit left. So if there was, it would be here, the millions. But I would add 1 to it and it would become 1 million. Here we're rounding to the millions. There is no millions digit here, so we have to put a 0 there. Next to it is a 9, which is a big number. So 8 and everything after it gets turned to 0. And this number, the 0 here in front, goes up by 1. You get 1 million. Alright, next. 62,300 rounded to the thousands. The thousands have a 3 next to them, which is a small number, so it just becomes 0 and nothing changes. Next, the tens of thousands have a 2 next to them, which is a small number again, so it turns to 0. The 3 turns to 0, and we get 60,000. Next, we want to round to the hundreds of thousands, but just like before where we had no millions, now there's no hundreds of thousands, so put a 0 there. Next to them is a 6, which is a big number, So it and everything after it gets turned to 0, and the hundreds of thousands grow by 1. They become 1. Lastly, we want to round to the millions, but there is no millions, so we need to put in 2 zeros, because remember, there's also no hundreds of thousands, right? This 6 is the tens of thousands. The hundreds of thousands are 0. So next to the millions is a 0, which is a small number. So everything here gets turned to 0, and the number becomes 0. Now, next step. Here we're rounding to the thousands. Next to them is a 7, so it becomes 0, and the thousands grow by 1. They become 9. Then the tens of thousands have an 8 next to them, so it becomes 0, the 7 becomes 0, and the tens of thousands grow by 1, they become 6. Next, we're rounding to the hundreds of thousands. Next to them is a 5, which is a big number, so everything here becomes 0, but also the hundreds of thousands grow by 1. Next, the millions have a 6 next to them, which is a big number, so everything here becomes 0, and the millions grow by 1, they become 4. So 4 millions. That's exercise 1. Let's then move on to exercise 2, right? Can't see. No, this is exercise 2. Okay, so this is mostly theory, but there are a few exercises down here where we get asked to round to the tenths, which are here. Now we need to round all of these to the tenths. So here, 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 and then the hundredths, which are here, 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 and here. Alright. Now, this 2 has a 9 next to it, so it's going to grow by 1. So we get 0.3, then the 9 would become 0, and the 6 would become 0. But because they're decimal numbers, we don't write those zeros at all. Alright. 0.3. Alright. Then this 8 has a 9 next to it, so it's going to grow by 1. It's going to become 5.9. 9 would become 0, but again, we don't write it. Then this 3 has a 1 next to it, so everything here, the 1, the 4, the 5, all become 0, and the 3 stays the same, so we get 2.3. This 0 has a 6 next to it, so it's going to grow by 1, and the 6 becomes 0. So we get 42.1, and this 0 we don't write at all. Then this 6 has a 7 next to it, so it's going to grow by 1, so we get 4.7. Then the 0 that would become here, we don't write it at all. Next, this 3 has an 8 next to it, so it's going to grow by 1. It's going to become 4, and we get 7.14. Let's go here. Wait a minute. I made a mistake. Yep. I rounded to the hundredths. What I should have said is that this one has a 3 next to it, so it stays the same, and the 3 and the 8 become zeros, but I don't write them at all, so we get 7.1. Yeah, everything else is okay. And this 4 has an 8 next to it, so it grows by 1, it becomes 0.65. The 8 and the 1 become zeros, but I don't write them at all. Here, the 6 has a 9 after it, so we get 0.77. The 0 that comes up here, we don't write. Next, we have 3.79. 1 is a small number, so we get 3.79. Here, 4 has a 5 next to it, which is a big number, so we get 2.15. The 4 grows by 1, becomes 5, and then this becomes zeros. Next, the 5 has a 9 after it, so 5 is going to grow by 1. We'll get 12.46. Lastly, we have 32. Now this 0 has a 7 after it, which is a big number, so we get 32.01. So that's exercise number 2. Pause the video if you have to. Moving on to exercise 3. Moving on to exercise 3. All right. We need to round these numbers and then put them in order. We need to round them to the hundredths. So here, 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 and here. All right, we're going to write the rounded numbers on this first line, and then below it, we're going to put them in order. So the first number, what does it become? This 8 has an 8 after it, so it's going to grow by 1. We're going to get 0.79. Here, this 3 has a 1 after it, so the 3 stays the same. So we get 0.43. This 6 has a 7 after it, so it's going to grow by 1. We're going to get 0.87. This 7 has an 8 after it, so we get 0.58. This 2 has a 9 after it, so we get 0.63. And now let's put them in order, from smallest to greatest. The smallest one is this one with the 4. So we're going to have 0.43. Then next is, actually, you know what? I don't need to rewrite them. I could just track them. There we go. Next is this one with 5. Next we have this one with a 6. Whoa. No, no. That was not what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do. Then we have the one with the 7/10. And then we have the one with the 8/10.
Here we have a problem, and we're being told that at a supermarket, 6 packs of biscuits are being sold for $17.99 altogether, that is. So altogether, the 6 packs of biscuits cost $17.99. And we're being asked about how much each pack costs. So what that means, the word about means that we should round this number before we divide it by 6, because, well, since we know how much 6 packs cost and we want to find 1, we're going to need to divide. So before we divide, we're going to need to round this number. And you might think, well, what do I round it to? Do I round it to the tens? Do I round it to the ones? Well, you want to round it to the digit that will give you the least amount of error, but also be a round number. So if you round to the tens, well, you'll notice that whether you want to round to the tens or the ones, you get the same result. So if you round to the tenths, let's say, next to the tenths is a 9. So this would become 0. This would grow by 1, become 10, right? So these two would become zeros. But then because this became 10, 1 would get carried over to the 7. and the 7 would become 8. Now, if you wanted to round, so what did we get there? We got 18.00, or just 18. If we wanted to round to this number, to the ones, we'd say, okay, there's a 9 next to it, which is a big number, so these will become zeros again, and the 7 becomes 8, right? So what we get here is 18.00, or just 18 euros, right? Okay, so what's the difference here between this and this, right? What's how much did this change? What's the inaccuracy, basically? This is 17 euros and 99 cents. So by saying that, okay, it's about 18 euros, we're only off by 1 cent, right? Only 1 cent. This is 99 cents. If you add one more, it's going to become a whole euro, and this would become 18. So the difference is only 1 cent. Now here, if we wanted to round to the tens, right, we'd look to the right. There's a 7 here. And we'd say, okay, that's a big number. So all these get turned to zeros. But the 1 also grows by 1. It becomes 2. So 20.00, or just 20. So by rounding to the tens, we get 20. Now, if we rounded and we got 20, and we said, okay, it's about 20 euros, we'd be off by 2 whole euros and 1 cent, which is a whole lot more than just the 1 cent difference that we got by rounding and getting 18. So we're going to round and say that this 17.99 is about 18 euros. And to find the cost of 1 pack, we're going to divide 18 by 6, and we know that 18 divided by 6 gives us 3. So my answer here should be that one pack costs about 3 euros. Next exercise. Pericles is paying for a cell phone that he bought, and he's going to be paying 12 payments of 29.99, so 29 euros and 99 cents. Question is about how much money will he pay, and then exactly how much money will he pay, and then what is the difference between the two. So question A is about how much money will he make. So what that means is that we need to round this number before we calculate that. Rounding it will get us that it is about 30 euros, right? Because 29 euros and 99 cents is about 30 euros, right? Times 12, because that's how many payments he's going to make. What we get from that is 360 euros. The next question is exactly how much money will he have to pay? In which case we need to do exactly the price, exactly the payments. So 29.99 times 12, which we need to do vertically. 29.99 times 12. 2 by 9 makes 18, so I'd write 8 and carry 1 in my mind. 2 by 9 makes 18 again, plus 1 that I carried over makes 9. By 9 carry 1. 2 by 9 makes 18, plus 1 that I carried over, 19. 2 by 2 makes 4, plus 1 that I carried over makes 5. Right, 0 beneath the ones, and then 1 times all of this is going to give us 9, 9, 9, 2. And add. And 8 plus 0 makes 8. 9 plus 9 makes 18. Right, 8 carry 1. 1 plus 9 plus 9 will give us 19. 1 plus 5 plus 9 will give us 15. Then 2 and 1 that I carried over will be 3. The decimal point is going to go here, so he will be paying exactly 359 euros and 88 cents. The difference between these two, so if you subtract the two, what you're going to find is a difference of 0.12, which means, and let's write that we got that by doing 360 minus 359.88. And the difference is 0.12, right? Which means that the difference is basically 12 cents, which is minimal. It's nothing. It's okay, so we're off by 12 cents. So what? That's why when we have numbers like this, we round them. So you saw how much trouble I had to go through to get this result, and how much trouble I went through to get this result, where I just did 3 times 12 makes 36, and another 0 makes 360. There you go. 5 seconds and I found it. Whereas this took me a couple of minutes, maybe. And for what? For a difference of 12 cents. There's no reason to, well, I'm not going to say exhaust, but lose that time. There's no reason to lose that time for just 12 cents. So that's why we say, okay, this is about 30 euros. So I'm going to pretend like it is 30 euros, and I'm going to get a difference of 12 cents. But we call that negligible, because we can pretty much ignore it. Right? Okay. So let's continue to the next exercise, which is number 4. So here we need to round to specific digits. So here it's the tenths. So you can see I'm marking the tenths everywhere, and here we're going to be rounding to the hundredths. Okay, let's get started. The 2 has a 9 next to it, so it's going to become 3. And then the 9 and the 6 become zeros. So we get 0.3. The zeros here, they're in the decimal part. They're to the far right. I don't have any other numbers to the right, so I don't have to write them. Here we have 5.89. 8 becomes 9. So we have 5.9. 2.3145. So the 3 has a 1 next to it, which is a small number. So it remains 3, and everything else gets turned to 0. So we don't even write it. Next, we have 42.06. And the 0 has a 6 next to it, which is a big number. So it goes up by 1, and the 6 becomes 0. Next, we have 4.67. The 6 has a 7 after it. So it goes up by 1. It becomes 4.7. Next, we have 7.138. 1 has a 3 after it, so it stays the same, and everything else becomes 0. Next, we have 0.64. So the 4 has an 8 after it. It will go up by 1, and it will become 0.65. Here, the 6 has a 9 after it, so it becomes 0.70. Oh, extra 7 there. Wait, yeah, okay. And the 9 becomes 0. Then the 9 has a 1 after it, so it's going to stay the same, and the 1 becomes 0. Then we have 2.14. 4 has a 5 after it, so it's going to grow by 1, and everything else gets turned to 0. Then we have 12.459. So the 5 by 1 becomes 6, and everything gets turned to 0 because 9 is a big number. Then we have 32.0 will go up by 1 because 7 is a big number. So it becomes 1, and the 7 becomes 0. Next, we need to round them to the hundredths, and then we need to put them in order. So 0.788 will become 0.79 because, okay, I need to mark. The hundredths are here, 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 and here. So after the 8, there's another 8, which is a big number, so 8 becomes 9. Then we have this, which becomes 0.43, because 1 is a small number. Then the 6 becomes 7, because 7 is a big number, so 0.87. Then 7 becomes 8, because 8 is a big number. And lastly, the 2 becomes 3, because 9 is a big number. All right, now let's put them in order. The smallest one is this one. Then we have this one. Then we have this one. This one. Lastly, this one. All right. Let's move 0.63 up a bit. There we go. All right. Next one. We need to round this amount of money to the tens, and then we're going to add the numbers that we find. So 2,758 rounded to the tens becomes 2,716. Sorry about that. 3,425 becomes, rounded to the tens will become 3,430. Then 1,283 rounded to the tens will become 1,280 because 3 is a small number. And lastly, 2,496. We want to round to the tens. 6 is a big number, so it's going to make 9 become 1 greater, which is 10. So this turns to 0 and carries over to the 4, which becomes 5. So we get 2,500. And now we need to add all of this. So zeros will give us 0. And 6 and actually, you know what? Yeah. I'll just write it. But I will zoom in a little. The zeros will give us 0. Then 6 and 3 and 8 will give us 17. So write 7 and carry 1. 1 and 7 and 4 and 2 is, 1 and 7, 8 and 4, 12 and 2, 14 and 5, 19. So write 9 carry 1. 1 and 2 and 3 and another 3 makes 9 also. So this person has about 9,970 euros, which, if we round, now given that it doesn't ask us to round to any specific number, I say we round it to the thousands, which have a 9 next to them, so they're going to need to grow by 1 and become 10, where everything else becomes 0. So he's got about 10,000 euros. About, again, not exactly, but very close. Next exercise, and last exercise. All right, we're going to need to round these numbers. Here to the tens, here to the tenths, and here to the thousands. All right, so the 8 has a 4 after it, so it stays the same. The 7 has a 2 after it, so it stays the same. The 3 has an 8 after it, so it grows by 1. Here, the 6 has a 4 after it, so it stays the same. Here, the 2 has an 8 after it, so it grows by 1. Oh, wait. Here, the 0 has a 6 after it, so it grows by 1, becomes 1. Here, we're looking for the thousands, so the 3, 2, the 8. The 3 has an 8 after it, so it grows by 1. Everything else gets turned to 0. No. That's right. Then we have 72,238. 2 has another 2 after it, which means that it stays the same, and everything else gets turned to 0. 8 has a 5 after it, so it goes up by 1, and everything else becomes 0. We need to round to the hundredths and then add. So 13.465. We're rounding to the hundredths. So 6 has a 5 after it, meaning that it's going to grow by 1. Then 2.903. 2.903. 0 has a 3 after it, which means that it's going to stay the same. And 3 gets turned to 0, but these zeros I can completely delete. And then 7.086. 8 has a 6 after it, so it grows by 1. We get this. Let's make it so that decimal points are one beneath the other, like so. And then let's add. Zoom in a little bit. Here there should be a 7. Let's actually write that 7. Yeah, there we go. So 7 and 0 and 9 will give us 16. Right, 6 and carry 1. 1 and 4 and 9 will give us 14. Right, 4 and carry 1. 1 and 3 and 2 and 7 will give us 13. Yeah. Right, 3 carry 1. 1 and 1 will give us 2. The decimal point goes down. So we get 23.46. We round the following numbers to the ones, and then we do the addition to in our mind. So we have 8.25 plus 6.9 plus 2.3 plus 9.8. 8.25 rounded to the ones. The ones have a 2 after them, so they stay the same. So this becomes just 8. 6.9. 6 has a 9 after it, so it grows by 1, so this becomes 7. 2.3. 2 has a 3 after it, so it stays the same. 9.8. 9 has an 8 after it, so it grows by 1. Becomes 10. So we have to do 8 plus 7 plus 2 plus 10. And the sum of that is 27. Next, we need to do 7.4 plus 12.1 plus 0.998 plus 10.9. 7.4. 7 has a 4 after it, so it stays the same. 12.1. 2 has a 1 after it, so it stays the same. 0.998. 0 has a 9 after it, so it grows by 1. Becomes 1. 10.9. 0 has a 9 after it, so it grows by 1. You get 11. So we have to do 7 plus 12 plus 1 plus 11. So that makes 31. Next, round the numbers to the tenths. 7 has a 2 after it, so it stays the same. 9 has a 6 after it, so it's going to grow by 1. It's going to become 10. So write 0 and carry 1 over to the 5. Becomes 6. 36.0 can also just be written 36. 0.19. 1 has a 9 after it, so it grows by 1. It becomes 2. 7.354. 3 has a 5 after it, so it grows by 1. It becomes 4. 0.065. 0 has a 6 after it, so it grows by 1. 0.1. 25.03. 0 has a 3 after it, so it stays the same. And we delete that entirely, and we just get 25. Lastly, we have a problem. So a construction worker earned 1,100 euros in 1 month and 968 euros in the other month. And he earned 44 euros per day. So, and we're being asked how many days he worked. To find that, we need to add these two. And by adding these two, we are going to get 2,068. And to find the end result, we need to divide that by 44. So let's do 2,068 divided by 44. 44 does not fit into 206. Sorry, it doesn't fit into 20. It does fit into 206. How many times? Let's try 4. 4 times 44 is going to give us 176. This subtraction will give us 30, which is less than 44, so I can continue. Carry down the 8. And how many times is 44 going to 308? Let's try 7. Let's try 7. 7 by 4 will give us an 8. Yep, exactly 308. And the subtraction gives us 0. So he worked for a total, he worked for 47 days. All right, final worksheet done. That'll be all for today. I'll see you guys again on Monday. Bye.